session now. So good evening, welcome all. This is an online training series number 1. It's initiative from our consortium of Chennai. Today's session is an introduction to ISO 20700 2017 version, guidelines for management consultancy services. If you have any difficulties in my voice, please use chat box to communicate. Since we are in lockdown situation for next 21 days, we are going to be in the same lockdown mode. So CCC wants to use this time for knowledge sharing and upskilling, reskilling purposes. So what we planned is each day we are going to have an online training about 40 minutes, each day one topic by CCC members for CCC members. That's what the all about. So about myself, this is Karthi. I'm from Nucleus Consultant. We are into this consulting services. I'm practicing this management system for past 15 years. So that's about me. So today, the content, what we are going to see is like this. So we'll start with a basic introduction. Then what are the key terms and definition used in the standard? And the consulting process addressed in ISO 20700. And there are a lot of examples of guidelines given in the standard. We will walk through a few guidelines. At the end of the session, we have question and answers. If my audio is clear, please just type yes in the chat box. Yeah, thanks. So what is this ISO 20700? When it was released, the first edition of the standard was released in June 2017. This is not the first standard with respect to management system consultancy guideline. There are some other standards which is already there in place. For example, EN 16114, it is 2011 version. This is basically a European standard. And why ISO released a separate standard for this? The clarity and the transparency are the key factor in consultancy. So an ISO understood this very clear. Management consulting industry is a big business and it's driving company behavior and influencing government agendas and various financial institutions. But it only works well when client and consultant are on the same page. The clarity and transparency is the key to success for both the sides. So the new ISO committee, ISO PC 280 was formed and they have developed the standard. What it is, it's a written guidance. It's not an auditable standard. Again, it's not a requirement. It's a guidance applicable to all management consultants, applies to an organizations, even individuals or a big consulting groups. The ultimate aim of the standard is to improve transparency and understanding between the management consultancy service providers. This word management consultancy service provider, MCSP, that is a term we are going to use throughout the standard. Instead of that, I use the word only consultant to avoid confusion, just consultant. So it is consultant and their clients. That's the aim is to have a better clarity and understanding between the consultant and their clients. That's what all about this. We heard about a lot of things about consulting. Is it possible to standardize the consultancy process? How do we protect the innovations? Is this applicable to all type of consultant or just management system consultant? It's very difficult to measure an outcome of a consulting services. Like most of the time it's intangible. It's very difficult to measure. It's not just getting a certificate or not just providing a service or solution. How we are going to measure? Of course, yes, when ISO developing this standard, they considered all these factors, all these questions, all these doubts, because this is developed by the experts, people who are already into the consulting field, and they have developed a standard, they made it available for draft, and a lot of comments they have received, and they have made this standard. So some of the key terms and definition used in the standard. Management consultancy service, what it is. It's an intellectual work within the field of management. The ultimate aim is to create value or promote changes by providing some advice or providing some solutions. At the end of the day, you have to produce some deliverables. This is the exact term given in this ISO 20700. So it's like creating value or promoting changes by providing advice or the consulting or coaching, whatever. So the provider, whoever provides this, that's what they call it as. It's maybe organization or individual or a proprietor or standalone organization, doesn't matter. Any type of organization that offers and delivers these services, they are called as MCSP. We use the term consultant here after further. Then the deliverable, if you look at the standard, they made it very clear what is deliverable. It's a tangible item. They call it as a deliverable is a tangible item produced by consultant as part of an assignment. So when you say tangible item, it's very difficult with respect to management system consulting services. So what their interpretation is, like the reports, whatever we are generating as part of our consulting services, whatever the documents we are delivered as part of our consulting services, that can be considered as a deliverable. That's what their interpretation. Then outcome. This is the final outcome of our consulting service. Impact or result of an action or process. These are some of the key terms I would like to highlight here. So this particular standard, is it my voice is audible to you all? Just say, type just yes in your chat box. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mani. So this 20,700 standard classifies this consulting process into three important phases: contracting, execution, and closure. This is not new to us, what we already doing, but they put it in a different structure. So let's see this contracting, execution, closure. Whatever these three activities cannot done by the consultant alone. All these activities are jointly taken by the consultants and the client. Let's start with contracting. The client and consultant should have a clear agreement, a documented agreement, which clearly says what is the scope and what is the approach of this consulting service. This activity starts once we have reached in proper understanding, and without this contracting, without this agreement, we cannot proceed a consulting service. That's what this guideline suggesting us. Then execution. Once the formal agreement is made, we need to go into start with that execution. You have your own plan, the agreed plan, right? So here the standard give a proper guideline. It starts with collaborate with confidence, fairness, and mutual respect. The ultimate outcome of execution is there should be a positive outcome. Then of course the last stage is closure. Once the project, the consulting assignment has completed, so we should have a ensure that all deliverables and the results and the outcome have achieved, and you resolving all unfinished items, then we come to a closure of this project. These are the three major milestones they have identified in this guideline. Let's go one by one, each these three phases. First, again, I'll start with the contracting. What is the purpose of this contracting? So this particular phase, again, it needs to be performed by both client and consultant. The consultant should only enter into an agreement that protects interest of the client as well as the consultant. There is a technical term we are using here, stakeholders. Who are all the stakeholders in a consulting project? It's not always the client alone It includes the community, it includes the public, it includes the customer, end users, suppliers, subcontractors, even the legal authorities. So when we made contracting, we have to consider the needs and expectation of clients as well as the stakeholders. When we are entering an agreement, we have to consider what are the potential constraints, risk-based thinking. Again, this guideline is insisting that. And of course, changes. Once we start a consulting project, after that, there may be a lot of changes may happen, right? So consider those type of changes. Which are the changes we are going to do within the scope, within the consulting scope, which is not covered under the scope. So these are the various considerations we need to do when you are doing this agreement. So your agreement should have clear requirements, what are the specification, and what type of deliverables you want to deliver. Everything should be in detail. We have to address it. Even the roles and responsibilities, what are the acceptance criteria, typical terms and conditions. So these are all some of the part of this contracting phase. And execution phase. The purpose of this phase is to deliver exactly, right? We have to deliver what we have agreed. The execution is the performance of services, what we have agreed upon in that earlier phase. Beyond the delivery of agreed services and the performance of your assignment, the ultimate aim of execution phase is to fulfill the agreement. In this phase, you are refining your agreed work plan. Typically, in the earlier stage, we might have developed a macro level plan. Here, we need to develop some micro level plan. Here only we are going to implement our work plan. We need to prepare, analyze, and recommend. So all those execution happens here. And during this execution, we need to govern our project, and resource management is one of the key stage here. What are the resources we are deputed for a consulting project? What is their competence? What are their capabilities? What are the risks involved when executing the contract? What type of communication methodology we are going to establish with our client? Everything needs to be considered in this particular stage. And of course, there should be an ongoing evaluation and improvement. Once you start your consulting project, what is the frequency of evaluating it? It should be agreed when you do your contract stage itself, right? So these are some of the key components they have addressed in that execution stage. Now, coming to the closure stage. So the purpose of this closure phase is finally you have to prove that whatever you agreed, it is delivered. So the assignment is completed when the acceptance process as defined in the agreement is completely done. The consultant should not consider the assignment is closed until the final closure topic have been addressed. For example, a legal and contractual matters. The very important thing is here invoicing, payment, right? That always plays a major role. And one critical factor here, what we have considered is, what we need to consider is the ownership of intellectual property rights. As part of consulting project, you might have, even we have started the definition with this. What is management system consultancy? It's intellectual property, right? So we are going to give some solution. We gave some solution, right? So who is the ownership of this intellectual property? So those things we might have identified in the earlier stage, and we need to closure stage, we need to review that. And final evaluation and improvement, that is one of the critical factor here in the closure. What type of process effectiveness we are going to identify, and what are the process improvement we have made as part of this consulting project, and what is the client satisfaction, and briefing, knowledge transfer, everything we have to consider this particular stage. And is there any outstanding minor issues? Typically in our case, the audit closure, right? The stage 2 certification body audit closure till the receipt of the certificate. So what is our project agreement between you and your client? That we need to verify here. So there are some typical input output defined by this guideline. So most of these requirements are as part of our consulting project. We start with proposal and we execute our project. We have some action plan and we wind up the project. But during wind up, during the closure, we don't pay much attention. We'll be more focused towards the financial settlements, right? So, but this standard gives you some more clarity. Yeah, is it my voice is audible? My screen is visible to you? Just say yes. Can you type yes? If this voice is clear and the screen is visible, just type yes. Yes, thank you. So these are the three phases where this guideline recommending us when you are establishing a consulting project, we need to consider. Let's move to the next phase. Responsibilities. This is always a key factor, decides who will be the responsible person for any successful completion of any project. So the consultant is responsible. That's what the guideline starts with this. The consultant is responsible for their own resources, for their own consulting work, but the ultimate accountability for decisions, the consulting project outcome, deliverables, and the impact on the stakeholders is completely lies with the client. So when you made agreement, this needs to be clearly flow down to your customers. That's what this guideline emphasizes. Because the ultimate accountability, we can't take call on the decision, final decision. It's always with the client. So the responsibility is always with the consultant, but the final accountability is with the client. When I say resource, it includes the asset, people, and their skill set, and what are the information technology we are used in this particular consulting project. When we need to access the site or the premises or their suppliers or their information, that should be available, right? When we delivering our consulting work. So this is how the responsibility should be clearly highlighted in your agreement stage itself. Typically, any consulting proposal has what is the scope of consultant, what is the scope of client. So that's what standardize is emphasizing. And there are some consideration when you are providing management system consulting services. The ISO 20700 recommending us to consider few things. The first one is the other standards. When you are implementing a quality management system, our scope and boundary is limited to quality management system. But what this guideline suggests is later, like you have to consider some other relevant standard, project management, because each consulting contract is a project, right? So as a consulting partner, we can consider the project management. The very important thing is ethical behavior and risk management, business continuity, like this corona. Now we are almost started exercising this business continuity for our own consulting business. And of course, quality management for delivering management system services, and safety and sustainability. So these are some of the other standards we need to consider. And also social responsibility. When we are delivering consulting services, what we can consider with respect to social responsibility. The guideline recommended is consultant should achieve socially responsible outcome that consider the interest of stakeholders. For example, our customers are making some product and services, they are providing some services, but end of the day, the stakeholder is going to get affected. If you came to know that during our consulting project, we have to take a call on this. So what is our contribution to sustainable development when you are doing consulting project? Ethical project governance, transparency, if the company is violating any legal norms, so how we are going to deal with that. So these are some of the consideration we have to do. And mainly alignment with some other international standards like international labor organizations, then UN conventions and conventions. So these things we need to consider when you are executing a consulting project. Then one critical factor, success factor in any consulting project is ongoing evaluation and improvement. And this ISO 20700 recommended few methodologies for ongoing evaluation and improvement. The purpose of this evaluation is for the consultant to assess and determine the effectiveness of the complete project. So it should be done by, again, agreed by both consultant and client, and a suitable methodology. What is the way of evaluating it? What is the frequency of evaluating? Even some customer doesn't mandate this evaluation. It is responsibility of the consultant. We should have a process to learn from the work what we undertook, right? So they are recommending this: diagnose the effectiveness of your assignment, make recommendations, coaching them for correcting their own processes and procedures. This is third one is very important. Implement new process and new methodologies which is really needed for this assignment, and receive feedback from each other. The end of the outcome is we need to add some value or create a change in the culture of the organization. So that is one of the, this can be considered as one of the tangible outcome of this ongoing evaluation and improvement can be considered as a tangible outcome. Yeah, is my voice is clear to you? Is there any disturbance in the network? If everything is fine, just type yes. Yeah, thanks. So there are some policies given in ISO 20700. These policies are there for the consulting services. Some of the policies are quite critical. Let's start this one by one. They first start with the regulatory framework. The consultant should maintain an appropriate level of awareness of relevant laws, policies, rules, and regulations. When you took up any consulting project, so what are the products, what are the services they do, what are the applicable statutory regulatory requirements? Now, as part of every management system, class 4.2 talks about needs and expectation of interested parties. So there we are trying to address what are the applicable regulatory requirements for their organization. But when we took up this consulting project, most of the time we will do it after getting into an agreement. But what this guideline recommended us is, even before getting into a contract, before getting into an agreement, try to understand what are the regulatory requirement applicable to that customer, how much they are adhering, because that will reduce the risk factors when we are delivering any consulting project. Okay, this particular, if you are worrying about voice and the screen, end of this training, I'm going to share this presentation. The complete video is now recorded. If possible, I can share you the recorded content also. Right. So just don't worry about this bandwidth. We will try to sort it out. So the first policy is a regulatory framework. So we have to be very careful on how much the customer or how much the product meet the applicable regulatory requirements. Then second one is a stakeholder engagement and commitment. The consultant should engage in dialogue with the client, not just the client, and also relevant applicable stakeholders. An effective strategy and policy should exist for communicating with relevant stakeholders for the duration of the assignment. So when you started dealing with the project, most of the time will only interact with the customers. Rarely will interact with the customers or the customers, all relevant applicable stakeholders. But the standard recommended us engage them also when you are executing a consulting project. The third one is, this is very critical, code of ethical and professional conduct. So this includes professional behavior, sustainability, social responsibility, conflict of interest, integrity. So a lot of factors we are addressing here. So the applicable code of conduct for the consulting project should be recorded as part of your agreement. That's the guideline they are recommending. Then project governance, this we have already seen, right? So we should have an agreement already in place, what frequency we are going to govern your project. But during this, you consider this governance even can be very contract to contract, considering the environmental, economic, political, cultural, social context. If a consultant has reason to believe that agreed outcome of assignment will not be met within the terms of agreement, we should inform the client in advance, right? Now, most of us, we came to know that whatever the project we took, whatever the commitment we have already gave, it is not going to happen because of this corona issue. So that's what the standard says, project governance. So how we are going to deal with our current project with respect to this project governance. Then capability. It is purely responsibility of the consultant for developing and maintaining appropriate capability throughout the assignment. When I say capability, it's purely the consultant who is going to deliver this project. The expertise, their personal skills, even subject matter expertise, and what are the tools and knowledge is required for this project. Everything matters under this particular capability. Then communication. Have a proper arrangement with the customer for effective communication. Always maximizes the understanding and minimizes the risk, right? That's what this principle is. And this is, I have highlighted this particularly, data protection and confidentiality. Now, every customer is very cautious about this. The consultant should safeguard the rights of privacy of all stakeholders, not just customer, all stakeholders, by limiting the type of information gathered and ways in which such information is obtained, stored, used, reported, and secured. Some of us might have faced, some customer doesn't allow us to keep our gadgets or our laptops. So it depends on the customer information security mechanism. But consultant should not use any stakeholders' data or information without their permission. Even this is not only applicable during the assignment, it also applicable after closure of the assignment. That's what this particular policy is. Then protection of intellectual property. The consultant has intellectual property rights, right? For know-how, methodologies, benchmarks, business model, what we have developed, right? So that should be properly addressed in the agreement. Typically, consultant owns the intellectual property right unless otherwise specified in that contract. Then social responsibility, we have already seen this. Health and safety, risk and quality management. When we are executing contract, we need to consider this also. We might have heard about a lot of companies are certified for a various management system. The consultant delivered an excellent job. The client is certified. Later, some fire accident happens because of various issues, right? So when we do this type of projects, we have to give some importance to the health and safety and the risk and the quality management of delivering a consulting project. Then guarantees. We must negotiate with the customers, because if we, every consulting projects, with respect to our management system consultant I'm talking about, every consulting project is not guaranteeing a certificate, right? It's only an implementation methodology. So a consultant should negotiate and agree on the condition of any guarantee of services to be provided. So these are some of the policies which is addressed in ISO 20007, right? So is this audio is clear? Just type S. Yeah, thank you. Okay, now there are a lot of examples of guideline for management consultancy service provider given in the standard. For example, who are the stakeholders? What is the basic structure of consulting activity? What are the guidelines for code of conduct? What do you mean by conflict of interest? How to manage those conflict of interest? And how to evaluate a consultant capability? And what are the risks we are going to face in a consulting project? And what are the things we need to do as part of pre-assignment before signing any contract? So a lot of guidelines they have given. Since we have a 40 minutes time limitation, I'm not going to go through every guideline. I'm going to pick few sample of some of the important guidelines. Then we'll walk through it. So this is one typical example guideline for a code of conduct. The purpose of this code is to help consultant to serve public in general, the client in particular, the reputation of this consulting profession, and comply with the applicable laws. Here the key is most of the code of conduct is directly connected to the complying the applicable rules and regulations. This is classified into two categories: ethical principle, responsibility to the public, and responsibility to the profession. So they are classifying like this: responsibility to the public, efficiency. It's like optimizing personnel, client, and other resources to complete an assignment, right? That's what the whole principle is. See how many mandates we are going to deliver for a project, whatever the agreed, within that agreed manpower, how efficiently we have delivered our project, how we are managed our resources. That's what this particular code of conduct is. Because some projects we took it mandates basis, from some project we took it as a deliverable basis, right? So the efficiency really, the exact value addition happens here, right? The next principle is sustainability. As part of consulting services, we are to recommending solutions that are compatible with the principles of sustainable development. That's the key code of conduct we have to consider. Then responsibility, representing the interest of the consultancy industry to the wider community. That's another code of conduct. I think this code of conduct is more or like when we make our triple C code of conduct, we can see this replication. Most of our triple C code of conduct also relevant to this. Of course, legal, we have already discussed this. We should aware about what are the applicable legal requirement for that particular assignment, right? We need to ensure we are not causing any person or persons or what do you say, during this execution of project, we are not going to do any favorism to that particular individual, right? We need to comply the local laws. That's what whole about the code of conduct. Then public confidence. So conducting their activities at all times in a manner that fosters confidence in the profession. So this is some of the code of guidelines given by this particular standard. And what is the ethical principle we need to practice for this profession? Respect for the profession. Exhibiting conduct that reflects honorably upon and enables the standing and public regard to the profession. And we have already put some cartoons in my previous slides, right? How people are making memes about management system consultant, right? So that's the another side of this particular principle. And of course, integrity and professionalism. We are well aware about this. Even if you do any auditor courses, even ISO 19011 talks about integrity and profession, right? So this standard also addressing a lot about this. Then there are some guidelines with respect to management of conflict of interest. What is the conflict of interest with respect to management system consulting services? See, consulting services independent, objective consulting advice involves the entire potential conflicts. So a consultant should avoid actual as well as perceived conflicts of interest. For example, prior or current client relationship, family relationships, internal consulting organizations, financial interest, legal regulatory prohibitions, and some other business relationships. We need to consider all these type of conflict of interest when you are taking a contract. For example, multiple projects with the same client at different level, different location. So there we may have some conflict of interest, right? Then client is a former client and consultant as a client or a formal client in the same industry, we just use some copy paste type, right? Then staff members having some relationship, financial interest, right? And audit relationship. So these are some of the examples they have given. A beautiful example given in that guideline. I'm just picking up the title here because of this time shortage. This is criteria to evaluate capability of the consultant. The competencies of the consultant, consulting staff, they are classified into two categories. This one is mainly staff competencies, like domain expertise, industry knowledge, business knowledge. There's a key factor here. Then consulting skill, problem solving skills, resourcefulness, knowledge and experience of the consultancy process. Then people skill, communication skill, conflict management, relationship management, especially collaboration. These are some of the skills is needed for our consultant delivery person, right? And also they are recommending some resources, products like Six Sigma, then information with respect to market analysis, database, market information and all. Then research report, book published by various industry forums, research data, focus survey groups, right? These are the various skills we need to possess and develop as part of consulting delivery partner. And methodologies like SWOT analysis, contingency planning, risk management, right? Then tools, software tools, training softwares. The network means like market and industry sources. Typically, CCC is one good example for this networking. Then capability improvement. We need to conduct ongoing training programs, career developments. Right? These are some of the examples of criteria to evaluate capability of a consultant. So we can use this as a self-measurement to evaluate our capability, every individual capability. I think you might have aware there is one more standard is there which tells us how to select a management system consultant. This standard is general management consultant. There is one more particular standard talks about management system consultant, how to select a management system consultant. That standard is generally used by the organization to select a consultant. But this guideline will help you how to execute a consulting project. So these are some of the risks involved in any consulting project. So risks from client, risk based on the nature of the engagement, risk from quality of delivery. For example, we are facing a lot of risks, right? We have discussed a lot in our forum. What are the risks we have faced? So these are some of the key things we'd like to address covering in this session, right? So I'm going to enable the audios. If any have questions, please type me so that I can enable or unmute your thing, right? You use your chat box, raise your hands, because we have 10 minutes more for this session. Later we can discuss on WhatsApp. So any specific questions? If any have questions, just type in chat box, so I will unmute you so that we can discuss. The rest of the people can hear it. Yeah.
Karthik?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Karthik?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Shall I talk? I'm Prem
Yes,
Kumar.
yes, you can, sir.
Very good evening to all. Actually, I have listened this whole session. Okay. I know very well that this standard is not having any certification.
Yes.
So far, it is only the guideline standard. It is not having any certification. Is there any updation on this? When we can go for certification process for this standard? Any updation available recently?
Yes. Yeah, see the guidelines, most of us aware about that. Guideline standards are not certifiable. Even some certification body with our relationship, we can ask them to give a certificate on 20,700. That is possible, but that doesn't add any value. It's like a self-certification. That's what all about. Maybe ISO can take a call. They can convert this into a requirement, and they can call it as a certifiable standard, requirement standard. Yes.
See, which is Karthi?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah, audible.
Mentioning about another general management consulting guideline or document, right?
Yes. ISO
is it a separate
10,000.
guideline?
Yeah. I'll just you can see the screen. It is ISO 10,019.
Oh, this is the one 10.01.
This tells us how to select a quality
Okay.
management system consultant and
Okay.
service. This is for our clients.
Hmm.
Even this can be used for delivering consulting services. So the purpose of the standard, they made it to.
Yeah, that is right.
Yeah, as a consulting organization, we can.
Yeah, at least we will know what is the spec.
Yes, this can be used.
Maybe I think we will have a separate session on this this document. At least we should know what is the spec and criteria here.
Fine. So, any other specific question?
Is this possible, Karthi? I'm just asking, is it
Yes.
possible to come out with some of a if certification criteria or an assessment criteria based on this document, whether we can 2700, whether we can evolve any kind of criteria.
Yeah, yes, madam.
Forget about certification or an assessment later on. Maybe we can take it up with NABCP or somebody. Yeah.
There are some organization internationally offering like CMC. They convert this 50,700 into a checklist or guideline.
I got it. Like your project management consultancy,
Correct.
project management, PMPs, and all of them.
Correct. There are some voluntary body does this.
So we can.
But it is not
Voluntary,
much,
yeah, that is what I'm asking. So I guess we'll have to maybe over a period of time we will also ask, try to come out with some kind of a criteria.
Yeah, that is very much possible.
With the help of NABCB or somebody, we can do it.
Yes, yes.
Right. I missed the first portion. Maybe I need the presentation. I slept off.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions?
So we are nearing the time limit. Maybe I can share you this presentation through Rama.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
How is the clarity for everybody?
Everyone can talk. I have unmuted all. One by one, you can just share your
Because it's very clear from my end, it is very clear, but for short interruptions here and there, it is very clear. There are 17 people actually on the 17 participants.
Yes.
It is excellent. Karthi, this is Ramesh Kumar.
Yes, sir.
It's really good one for who is I'm very just started 3 years before my consultancy. Just my one question, I just chatted it.
Yes, sir.
That is there is any quantitative? I hope the Rama ma'am also made that question.
Yes, yes.
Any quantitative assessment process is there from this 20,700 standard?
Yes, it is not made by ISO, but there are some individual organizations who made those scoreboard
Okay.
criteria.
Yeah, red 12.
That can be utilized.
Okay.
We will try, Mr. Ramesh. We'll have to come out with something like this. We will try.
Okay. And it is really super, Karthi. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a
lot.
Okay, so thank you all. I'll
Way to go, Karthi. The first session, very, very, very good. Very good. All of us should get into it.
Yes.
I mean, this is one way of keeping engagement options open.
Okay. So I'll just end this meeting. Thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.